Today I'm talking about something very special, and it's all special, but this is particularly special, and it's a little painful. And the idea of this sermon is exemplified in the title, Not My Will, but Thine Be Done. And yes, I'm talking about that. Sacrificing your will. And I know it's not fun, because believe me, I'm having to do it too. I'm sitting in service, and my pastor, who has a bit of a comedic streak, recounted a time when he and his friend were just sitting together bragging on God. And this friend, we'll call him Bob for now, recounted a time when the Holy Spirit fell on him when he was in his car, headed down the road to some destination. He didn't say what. Bob was just so happy that God fell on him, he didn't notice that there was another car in the other lane coming at him that he was about to hit. And God said, "Get out of the road." He did. Now, Pastor was using this as when God falls on the road, you get off the road, let God do what He's going to do, and then get back to driving when you're safe. He was using it as a safety precaution. But I got to thinking, there are some other deeper meanings here. And, well, here it is. When you get the Holy Ghost, get off the road. Get out of the way and let God do His thing. What that means is, some examples of this are Noah. In Genesis 6:13-22, God said to Noah, "The end has come for all creatures, since they filled the earth with violence. I'm about to destroy them along with the earth." And He gives Noah the long list of specifications and all that good stuff. In verse 22 is where it says, and it's where it starts to get good. Noah did everything exactly as God commanded him. Now, he didn't just do everything. He did it exactly. Everything exactly as God commanded.
Warning, opinions approaching.
This is what I think. I think Noah was a farmer, and he was very used to having the ground underneath him, and his life was perfect. He obeyed God, he offered sacrifices, he did everything that he was supposed to do as a man of God and a man in that society. He had 3 sons, no daughters, and he had a wife. His sons were married. He had a big family. And everything was going perfectly for them. I think he probably just got the seed in the ground. He was going to have a good harvest come wintertime. His wife was making his favorite dinner, and he was about to go home. And at the end of the night, he kisses all his kids, tells them good night, have good sleep. And when his wife says, "Honey, you coming to bed?" he says, "No, I don't think so. I'm going to go out and stare at the stars for a bit." And God says, "I'm about to turn your world upside down. You're going to build a boat." And Noah's probably thinking, "Oh, dear sweet God, what did I do? What's going on here?" And when God explains everything to him, he goes, "Oh." And so he builds this ridiculous boat. Do you think Noah wanted to do that? Probably not. But in verse 22, it clearly states Noah did everything exactly as God commanded him. Look it up. Next, Abraham. This is the fun one. And of course, we're using our father, and why not? Because he's done some good stuff. Genesis 12, verse 1. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your land, your family, and your father's house, and go to the land that I'll show you." Verse 4. Abraham left just as the Lord told him. He was 75 years old when he left his father's house. Okay? He was still a young man. As such, he probably thought he was invincible. Probably thought, my life is perfect. I have a very beautiful wife who also happens to be my half-sister, but we won't get into that. And God says, "Get up, get out of your house, and go somewhere that I'm going to show you." Do you honestly think Abraham wanted to leave? And if he thought that was bad, the next one's going to be even more fun. In chapter 22, verse 2, God says, "Take your son, Isaac, that you love, your only son, and go to Moriah and kill him." Okay, I'm not a father. I don't plan on being one. But I know a couple fathers. And they're pretty attached to their kids, especially if it's their only kid. Now, and back in the olden days, back in the days of Abraham, if you had one son, you were a lucky man. Because you had an heir. And God's saying, kill him? And not just that, not just, quick, painless death. No. Stab him and burn him. Would you do that? I don't think so. But they arrived at the place God described. Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. He tied his son Isaac upon the altar. And Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. He was going to do it. He was already ready to take that knife and stab his kid in the heart. Do you think he wanted to do that? Because, boy, I don't. It goes on. We all know the story. God called to Abraham and said, hey, don't do that. Take the sheep over there instead. Of course, Abraham took it. Here's something interesting that I've had someone reveal to me recently. Back in verse 8, Isaac asks, where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will see to it. Now, later in verse 13, it's a ram, not a lamb. Ram is male, lamb is female. God didn't give the lamb in Genesis. And this was the connection I didn't make until it was explained to me. God didn't give a lamb in Genesis. He gave the lamb in Matthew. Did you catch it? For those of you that didn't, Abraham was prophesying. When Isaac asked, where's the lamb? Abraham didn't know it, but Abraham was prophesying about Jesus. Jesus was the lamb, and it's proven time and time again in the Gospels. You can find it. God provided the lamb for the sacrifice of the whole world. Because to Abraham, Isaac was his whole world. Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, last little example is Jesus. And you probably know what I'm going to say, but guess what? I'm going to say it anyway. Matthew 26, verses 36 through 42. Jesus went with the disciples to Gethsemane. He went to pray. He says, Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me. However, not what I want, but you want. Jesus is saying, I don't want to do this. And honestly, would you? I don't think any human would. But he says, I don't want to do this, but you want me to do it, so I'm going to do it. And again, he says it. In verse 42, he said, Father, if it's possible that this cup be taken from me, take it. If not, then let it be what you want. I will do what you asked me to do. These three men did not do what they wanted to. Noah didn't want to build a boat. He didn't want to be ridiculed by his friends and lose the ground beneath him. Abraham didn't want to get out of his father's house. He probably was quite comfortable there. And he sure as heck didn't want to kill his kid. And Jesus, duh. But they did what they were asked to by God. Now, how does this apply to us? It's very simple. You are your own worst enemy. You are the one that stands in your way, and only you can stop God. Scary thought, isn't it? But it happens so often amongst people. People do it every day. Now, what all this means is that we are the main characters in the story God is trying to tell us. Just got to try to write. But his characters have free will given to them by God, and so often we stand in the way. We don't stand in his will. Not thy will, but mine be done, is what Adam said. Not thy will, but mine be done. And he will not violate the free will choice of his creations. He can just hope. He will just hope and wait for us to pull a Bruce Almighty, dropping to our knees in the middle of a freeway, saying, I surrender to your will. Howdy, folks. Sorry to interrupt the wonderful sermon. I know you're just enwrapped in, but I have a couple of things. First, right now I'm in the editing process, and I heard myself say, drop to my knees in the middle of the freeway. not very safe. So at this point, I wish to advocate, don't drop to your knees in the middle of a freeway. I mean, sure, it's a wonderful sign to God, but still not smart. Also, I'd like to apologize for the glare that's on the screen. I don't know what happened. I'm hoping it won't happen again. My camera probably just messed up. I'm sorry. Please enjoy the show. So doing, we step aside from his path, and he will not only be able to bless those whom we come in contact with, but he'll bless us too for being good stewards with the time and energy he allots us to use for his good purposes. Now, he'll do finances as well, but that's a whole other sermon. Just being in the will of God, there are many byproducts that we don't ever see, and most people don't ever experience. Pastor was telling me a couple of weeks ago, that if you got a problem, if you're flat broke, and you have, after you've paid your tithe, which we'll get into that much later, after you've done everything you're supposed to do and you still don't have enough, you start praying for people who have problems. You said, I pray financial success for you. If you got a problem with your leg and you're limping around, you see someone else limping, you pray for them. Because as the Spirit flows through you, you're going to catch exactly what you need. That's putting ourselves into God's will. So long as our will's never going to line up with His. Never. It's just how we are. But if we set aside our will and we line up with His, He's going to do what He said He'll do. And He'll bless all nations. He'll bless anyone we come into contact with. Because we are not in His way. We're in His will. And from this day forward, I'm going to be in His will. Not in His way. As I've said so many times before, let's say it again. I pray that these words will reach and edify you. And as always, keep living, keep laughing, keep loving. And as always, keep looking up.